August 28, 1956, COINTELPRO begins the quietest way possible. On paper, one signature, one page, and a new era. The people on the ground won't see the top level. They'll just feel it: new directives, new pressure, new priorities. A memo turns. The mission fits into a few verbs: disrupt, expose, discredit. Simple words, dangerous in practice, because once the goal is results, the method. Morning. A signature in Washington. Evening. Someone types an anonymous's letter that will fracture trust. The targets won't see the program, only the rumor. One page becomes 10. 10 becomes 100. The decision spreads through corridors as copies each one, turning policy into action, and action into... It doesn't feel like history. It feels like logistics folders on a cart. Doors opening, doors closing. But inside those folders, a new kind of permission. The language is polite, but the intent is clear. Don't just watch, interfere, push, break trust. The agents don't need a lecture, they read. By night, it's already moving. A whisper, a hint, an anonymous accusation. Two friends will argue tomorrow, and neither will know they're reacting to a program. Infiltration doesn't arrive in a disguise. It arrives as a friendly face that shows up consistently. Trust is built the same way. Nothing is written where it can be found. The report lives in a memory trained to hold names, moods, and tiny shifts, then spills it all in a room designed. An anonymous letter is cheap and incredibly precise. It doesn't need proof. It only needs to land in the right place, at the right time, and let paranoia. Discrediting doesn't always mean destroying someone publicly. Sometimes it's quieter. Isolate the leader. Make allies step back. Make the room feel colder until the... Disruption isn't always an arrest. Sometimes it's a fight that never needed to happen, sparked by a rumor, a planted insult, a concern delivered at exactly. To expose doesn't always mean revealing evidence. It can mean creating the feeling of exposure, so people start policing themselves, shrinking their circles, doubting. Sometimes the dirty trick is pure paperwork. A form that suddenly doesn't match. A check that triggers questions. The target thinks it's bad luck never. By morning, the damage is real. Two people who trusted each other now trade suspicion instead. COINTELPRO doesn't need to win an argument only to make sure no one trusts. The most effective mask is friendliness. The informant doesn't dominate. He blends. He laughs when they laugh, claps when they clap, and remembers. The strangest part is the scale. A whisper in one office becomes policy in another. By the time it reaches the street, it doesn't feel like a plan, just a... Division doesn't require crowds. It starts with pairs, two people who used to trust each other, add one doubt, then another, until the movement spends more time fighting itself. The trick isn't proof, it's suggestion. If you can make people believe something is wrong, they'll supply the details themselves. That's discrediting. Letting imagination. Sometimes the attack isn't on you, it's on your job. One anonymous call to your boss, one concern, dropped like a match. Suddenly, your career feels unstable, and then come the random checks. A visit, a form, a delay. Nothing dramatic, just friction. Enough to drain time, money, and energy. Until a single provocation delivered by the right person can hijack a meeting. The group thinks it's just emotions, but the spark was planted and the fire spreads. And that's the point. The top level stays invisible. People on the ground don't see a program, they see chaos. Years later, when documents surface, sometimes the front is painfully innocent. A hobby club, friendly faces, quiet routines. But COINTELPRO learns that the best cover is normal life. Because no one suspects the damage gets sharper when it's personal. A rumor that uses real details. A claim that feels too specific to ignore. That's how. You don't have to stop a movement. You just have to redirect it. Turn planning into fighting. Turn trust into suspicion. If they're busy battling each other, the mission. On the street, it feels like bad luck and bad people. Up here, it's just procedure files, approvals, silence. The hand on the string stays invisible. And that's the most powerful mask is the concerned citizen. No badge, no name, just a voice that sounds reasonable, delivering a lie like. The cruelest trick is imitation. A letter that looks like it came from a friend just believable enough to sting. The target won't question the program, only the neutralization doesn't always mean arrest. Sometimes it means pressure until a person quits on their own, exhausted, isolated, afraid. The system wins when the logic is the real weapon. The end justifies the method. Once that's written into the mission, dirty tricks stop feeling like exceptions and start. The actions are tiny. The fallout isn't. One memo becomes 100 small moves, each one designed to look harmless, until the damage adds up. The program doesn't just target organizations. It targets perception. Once suspicion takes hold, the target starts watching everyone and the movement begins. A movement dies slowly when it can't do basic work. The agenda never finishes. Plans dissolve into accusations. And the outside world only sees infighting, not the instructions don't need drama. They arrive quietly. Push harder. Apply pressure. Create friction. The method is never announced, only repeated, until. A tip line sounds like public safety until it's used as leverage. One call can trigger visits, questions, and fear. The target never sees the source. Sometimes exposure is just a leak with no fingerprints, no source, no proof, only a story that spreads faster than any correction. Reputation collapses in public, while the political access are. No need for force, just remove the space. The room is unavailable. The schedule changes. People disperse, irritated, suspicious, and the movement loses another. Then there's the click tiny, almost imagined, and suddenly every call feels monitored. Even if no one is listening, the effect is the same. People censor themselves. The pressure follows you home. One anonymous letter just credible enough lands where you're supposed to feel safe, and suddenly your private life becomes part. A forged leaflet can do what arguments can't. Put words in your mouth, make your allies doubt you, make strangers fear you. It doesn't need to. The most efficient disruption is turning allies into rivals. A planted insult, a warning passed along. Soon two groups fight each other, while the real. After a while, it stops feeling like a decision. It becomes routine, repeatable, scalable, easy to justify. That's how dirty tricks turn. Disruption can be as simple as absence. The meeting never happens. People drift away, irritated, suspicious, and one more night of momentum disappears. Sometimes the tool is a person who seems helpful. They suggest a better plan, a safer route, a new leader. And quietly, the group starts moving exactly where. To expose someone, you don't always reveal evidence. You isolate them until everyone treats them like evidence. The target feels it first in. The city goes quiet, but the program doesn't. In offices far from the targets, someone is still sealing envelopes, logging names, applying pressure, then turning off the light. A printed rumor feels official. Sources say, reportedly. No names, no proof, just ink. And once it's in a paper, the target can't fight it without. The goal isn't always to convince, it's to confuse. If doubt becomes the default, every decision slows down. Trust turns into paperwork. And inside the bureau, it's just a file moved to the top of the stack. But that little change means more eyes, more pressure, more actions justified by a mission. Pressure makes people slip. One nervous glance, one sudden change of route, and the environment reads it as guilt. COINTELPRO doesn't need certainty, only reactions. Infiltration gets powerful when it controls access. A newcomer becomes the gatekeeper, deciding who meets who gets invited, who gets left out, and no one. The threat is often dressed as advice. Be careful. People are talking. Maybe you should step back. It sounds protective until you notice it always pushes. Eventually, the program doesn't need to speak. The group does it for them, self-censoring, avoiding risk, shrinking plans. Control works best when it feels like. On paper, it can look clean, procedural, justified, normal. The mess happens off the page, out in real lives, and that's why the paper trail can. The best sabotage arrives on schedule. Right before an important vote, a message appears. Not to prove anything, just to trigger a fight that one anonymous tip can bring official attention to your doorstep. Even if nothing happens, the message is clear. We can. You don't have to prove a leader is guilty. You only have to contaminate the room so everyone feels risky standing too close. Discrediting. The system doesn't call itself dirty. It calls itself necessary. With each action, the justification gets easier and the human cost gets pushed further. The cleanest way to stop a person is exhaustion. Not one dramatic blow, just endless friction. Letters, calls, delays, rumors, until the target runs out of energy. You can measure disruption in empty chairs. Attendance drops, volunteers disappear, plans get smaller. The movement doesn't collapse in one day, it shrinks until… Sometimes the most valuable intel isn't names, it's temperature. Who's scared? Who's angry? Who's ready to quit? COINTELPRO thrives on. The program doesn't announce milestones. It simply continues. A new folder, a new action, the same quiet directive, again and. When distrust spreads, the whole community becomes a machine. People report on each other. Friendships become liabilities. And the program barely needs to intervene. Paranoia. Sabotage can look like miscommunication. A message never delivered. A time misheard. Small errors that always cut in the same direction toward. The moment you're forced to defend yourself, you've already lost ground. COINTELPRO exposes people by pushing them into explanations until everyone hears doubt. In the office, everything has a clean label. Security, prevention, protection. Those words make harsh actions feel ordinary. That's how an era of dirty tricks can live. Then come the loyalty tests. Questions that sound casual, but aren't. The room waits for your reaction, and you realize suspicion has become the conflict feels personal, because it's engineered to be personal. A rumor with your name attached. A warning from someone you trust. And suddenly, the fight. One day the leader stops mid-sentence. Not because they forgot, because they can feel the room turning. Neutralization can look like quiet, a voice that decides it's safer. Years later, documents leak, and the chaos finally forms a pattern. The coincidences line up, and people realize the era didn't begin with a raid, it began. A reputation can't defend itself. Once suspicion lands, every denial sounds like proof. COINTELPRO doesn't need a courtroom, just a social circle that starts. You can dismantle a movement by breaking its schedule. Cancel a room, delay a permit, interrupt a call chain. When planning becomes impossible, the cause starts to… In the file, it's tidy dates, actions, justifications. Outside the file, it's chaos, broken friendships, lost jobs, fear at the doorstep, paper stays. The reckoning doesn't happen in the moment. It happens when the documents escape. Years later, the paper speaks. And suddenly, the dirty tricks have names. COINTELPRO doesn't feel like an event. It feels like an era. Once the machine is built, it outlives the moment that created it and keeps producing. Pressure doesn't always break people loudly. Sometimes it makes them disappear quietly. One poster down, one meeting canceled, one phone call unanswered. Neutralization can. The language always sounds noble. Security, stability, prevention. Those words make harsh tactics feel righteous. And once it feels righteous, it becomes. The people affected never see the whole machine. They only see their slice: rumors, checks, conflict. The design stays hidden in offices, where everything looks. Big eras don't always start with big actions. Sometimes it's one page, in one office, on one date, quiet enough to ignore, until you. On the ground, it never feels like a program. It feels like confusion. Plans fail. People fight. Trust evaporates. And everyone assumes it's just how. Years later, the documents speak in plain evidence. What was done, why it was justified, how it spread. The past stops being rumor. The real shock arrives late. Not during the operation after, when people learn the methods were built in from the start. And the consequences. It doesn't take a raid to start an era. It takes a stamp, a file, a signature turning intention into permission. After that, the machine doesn't need drama. One anonymous page can do more damage than 1,000 arguments. It doesn't prove anything, it just plants doubt, and doubt is enough to snap a face. The program doesn't always destroy you loudly. It shrinks you. You stop answering calls. You stop showing up. You start living smaller until your absence looks like. The blueprint is hidden in polite words. Security, prevention, protection. Language that makes extreme methods feel normal until years later, the paper proves what? August 28, 1956. No sirens, no raid, just a memo filed away. And from that quiet start, the era of dirty tricks begins to move. COINTELPRO teaches one hard truth. Systems don't look like attacks. They look like paperwork and coincidence until years later, the documents show the pattern that people,